Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Wendy Dillard here. Today is Thursday, May the 3rd, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And we are in all kinds of happiness moods today. I've been happily working on software with my developers for Louise's business so that we can have our own app for people to use on when they're, the gardeners were in the field tracking their time of what they're doing and knowing what schedule they have to go on and so forth. So I was happy to be working on that.
The best part of that sentence is that you're doing it happily.
I am doing it happily. You know why I'm doing it so happily? Because I'm not writing the code. That's why. I like that part. I am so glad I'm leaving code writing behind. I'm letting other people do it for me.
You're delegating. That's actually, and we'll talk about this later, but that's where we left off yesterday.
That's true.
I wanted to share about how to delegate to the universe. But that's just a preview, so keep going.
Okay, so there's a preview of coming attractions. Now, the book, I wish I could say I have some progress on the book. Unfortunately, the app had to come first because that's where we make our income right now. So the book is still going to go to the co-authors. It's going out. It was going to go out today. It looks like it's going to go out tomorrow. And once they get it in their hands, then we are just one step closer to publishing, which is the really exciting part of the whole thing. Yeah. And other than that, we're dealing with more warm weather today. I got a bike ride in again today, so I've been bike riding for like 2 or 3 days in a row now. So that's a good pattern. I like that pattern. You know what the weird part was though? Like I told you over the last few weeks or so, weather here has been kind of on the cool side. I mean, for a while they were in the 40s and 50s. Today I got into my car, and you know how the cars now have the little thermometer in there telling you what the temperature is? It said 99 degrees. And I said,
my God.
What happened to the 50s?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind.
Well, when I got up this morning and I headed off to my office in my home, and
yes, right,
behind my computer, I'm like, I'm kind of sleepy, so I'm going to turn on TV in the background just to kind of, get my brain a little bit more alert. And I normally hit the recording button to see what things I have pre-recorded. And instead it was live TV, and it was an odd thing for at 8 in the morning, my time, for the news to be on. But apparently they had preempted regular television because there were weather-related news things. And I don't watch that stuff. But here I was, almost mesmerized, going, what's going on? Because to me, nothing, I'm looking out my windows and everything looks normal to me. And they're predicting like horrible torrential rains and winds and all sorts of things. But what actually caught my attention was they were talking about how DFW Airport was closed. And I was like, whoa, something has to be pretty bad for the airport to be closing and all these airlines to be, canceling flights.
Right.
And so I was just curious. And so I listened for a little while, and I kind of just left it on that station while I started to do my work. And after about 15 minutes, I became so aware of what was going in my head, what I was really listening to. And how I noticed it was because I felt fear.
No kidding.
Yeah, I felt a shift from my happy-go-lucky, I'm doing my job thing, to all of a sudden I felt fear, and I had to stop and go, where the hell is this coming from?
Yeah, right.
This doesn't feel normal. And I just tuned into the television, and I was listening to all the things they were saying, and I heard them saying, make sure that you're plugging in your cell phones and get them charged up because we may be losing electricity, and, get all your supplies ready for, the worst in case, blah, 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 blah. And the moment I became consciously aware of what I was listening to, I went, this must go on all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And since I don't watch the news, what do I normally do? And the answer was simple. If it rains outside, I notice it because it's raining outside.
You don't need a weather report for that?
Yeah, if it's gloomy, I notice because it's not bright and sunny in my house. If it gets windy, I notice the trees swaying really big time, left and right and all over the place. And I thought to myself, well, I literally was feeling fear, and it wasn't for long, but it was enough for me to go, That fear is being induced by what's happening on television, because that's not coming from me. That's not coming from my inner being. And so I went, okay, I can turn that off. And I did. And then I just kind of had a moment to just sit and reflect on what just occurred. And I started thinking about how long I've gone without really paying attention to weather news and weather forecasting. And again, the thought was, well, what do I do when weather-related things happen? And I thought, in my life, they just come and they go.
That's it.
And when the weather is really gusting up, and doing all sorts of things, if something feels serious, like if there's a lot of lightning or when the thunderbolts are really close to my house, I just kind of check in with my inner being. I don't even have full sentences. It goes something like,
Okay.
Like, which equals, should I be concerned? Is there anything I need to do?
Is it time for me to go run under the table?
Yeah, and I kind of get it's all good, kind of like all clear, don't worry about it. It'll pass right over, enjoy it, because I enjoy every kind of weather that there is. And so this morning after I turned off the TV, a little while later, this was interesting, the doorbell rings, and it's the guy that services my lawn, True Green, they do fertilizing and, weed killing, that thing. So he's like, hey, I'm here today to do, fertilizing so your lawn will get, grow richer into the soil and get greener and thicker and whatever. And he said, we're doing it now because it should be raining within a couple hours. And this way it'll get rained in, which that's one of the things I love about them, is because they pay attention to the weather.
That's good.
I don't, but they do, because that's part of their job.
That's part of what they get paid for, right?
So he puts the stuff all over my lawn, and within an hour after him leaving, it didn't even bother to drizzle. It went straight from nothing to the clouds opened up and dumped water, and it was the kind of thing that was so fun. I'm looking out the windows, and the wind is blowing the rain as it hits the pavement in every which direction. It's swirling around, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. But I kind of had a memory from way back when I did used to really pay attention to weather forecasts, when I was in a state of fear, and I couldn't enjoy the swirling water and wind like I did today. And today it was just such a joy to watch nature do what nature does. It was beautiful. It was like a beautiful expression of nature. And then it stopped, and then it started up again. And whenever the weather was doing something today, I was just kind of in total enjoyment. And like right now, the sun is trying to peek through the clouds, and that's another level of total enjoyment. And I thought, wow, this all started because I got into fear this morning, jumped out of it, and the contrast of feeling the fear, I truly believe, is what allowed me to be so present and engaged by feeling the weather today. Because normally I kind of don't pay attention to it. It happens, it's pretty, okay, yay, and I move on. But today, it's like I felt like I danced with the weather. I was very present to what was going on, and it was just a lovely experience. And so that's what's happening for me today.
That's good. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, you've introduced a new concept, which I like a lot. The concept is, instead of listening to or watching the weather report, tune in to the inner being report and get the weather that way, and just find out, is there anything I have to worry about? No? Oh, okay, great. Then I'm done.
And remember, my code word to my inner being is,
yeah. And the best part is there are no commercials. There are no commercials. There's no interruptions. There's no fear-based stuff. It's just, anything there? No? Oh, okay, done.
And we move on. And so all the torrential things that, the weather forecasters were talking about, weather in my neck of the woods, it's like maybe 30 minutes, a break, about 15 minutes, and it was over. And it was just wind and rain. It wasn't anything worse. It wasn't hail. It wasn't tornadoes. It was just water.
Of course,
I'm not afraid of water.
If you listen to the forecast, they're saying, "Oh my God, we got potential tornado conditions here," and blah 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 blah.
Exactly. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I'm glad I paid attention this morning, because by tuning in, it did allow me to go into fear, which it was a good thing, because I was in a step one moment. I didn't like it. I was in an ask for what do I prefer.
Yeah.
And what I prefer is to feel a sense of peacefulness in my heart.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and a sense of just enjoyment of what there is to enjoy. And I did. I just thoroughly enjoyed the rain. And I love the fact that it, you know, because it came down so hard, I know that it like got the fertilizer, you know, deep into my soil. And
it was
it's like,
great. Yeah.
oh man, it's so good on so many levels. I love it.
That is really good. That's taking whatever life is throwing at you and turning it into, wow, I am so psyched, which is the optimum place to be. That's like the perfect place to be, because no matter what happens, you're always good. You're always feeling good. And because you're always feeling good, then all the good things happen to you. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful place to be.
So I have another fun little something that happened almost simultaneous to the weather scenario.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet that I open up like at the beginning of every day, and I share it with another coworker, and so we keep it on a server, which for those that don't understand it, it means it's not kept on my hard drive. It's kind of kept somewhere in a cloud.
It's in the cloud.
It's like an internet, but it's called an intranet because it's kept within my company.
Right.
And so I opened up this spreadsheet, and it's something that I add new data to a lot. And because yesterday was the end of the month, I was in and out of this thing, adding new stuff, modifying things, hitting save about 100 times a day, right? And so I keep a tab for every day that I do work.
Okay.
So yesterday was, 5/2. And when I opened the spreadsheet, the 5/2 tab was missing. And I'm like, ooh, this is not a good sign. So I kind of looked around, and sure enough, it was gone. And I did a little bit of instant investigation and determined that what was being kept on the server, it's the last update was from yesterday morning at 8:11 a.m.
Ah, a little out of date.
Well, and let me tell you, I worked until 1 in this morning.
Oh, yeah, very out of date.
I mean, I did the show, then I took a long break, then I went back to work, and I worked till 1 in the morning. And I was working on this spreadsheet until 1 in the morning, and all of this work that I did was gone.
Wow.
And, okay, so I love to say, here's what I would have done even as little as 6 months ago. I would have been a raving lunatic.
Understandably.
I would have been like, oh, my God, do you have any idea? And I don't know who I'd be talking to, but
yeah, well, it doesn't matter, really.
Idea how much work I did, and I don't know how I'm going to find it and recapture it. But it's, important, and I have to, take this data, turn it into a report, and send it upward to management. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm so screwed. This is what I would have done 6 months ago plus.
Okay.
So here was today. My data's missing. Wonder where I could find it. Okay, checked a few places. Nope, couldn't find it. Called help desk. They checked all the same. I watched them check all the same places I'd already checked.
Of course.
And I went, okay. And so he said, well, this is my favorite question. I said, have you ever experienced anybody else at my company where they've lost data that was on one of our secured servers? And he said, he didn't really answer that question. And he said, well, sometimes servers can be unreliable. So we recommend that you save it to your hard drive.
Oh, cute.
And then upload it. And he goes, are you sure you saved? And I'm like, about 100 times. Trust me, I'm so save conscious because I've lost data before that I save. I put in a period and I save. I write the word, put in my initials saying that I did this task. I save. I mean, I save a million times. And so anyway, he said, well, I've escalated this to tier 2, and I told him it was urgent. And I said, okay, thank you. So I hang up with him, and I am dumbstruck by the sheer difference in my reaction. Because I didn't get angry at him, because I know but I was a beast. I would have talked this guy and made him cry practically. Like, what do you mean the server's not secure? What do you mean these things can go wrong and I should save it on my hard drive? I would have just gone ballistic. And I was so aware at this negative state. I wasn't like, woo, happy, but I was purely in a neutral place where nothing that happened ruffled my feathers. And I was like, oh my gosh, did an alien take over my body? Who am I? This is such a wonderful way to respond. Like, this has been my prayer for years and years and years and years and years, that I would take control of how I respond to things, but that my response would be the way I want it to be, autopilot. And this is what I experienced today. I had an autopilot response to something that could have been really bad. And I just was like, And so when I got off the phone with him, I went, well, I wonder what I could do to reconstruct this. And I went and found some things, and I'd say it took me about an hour, which shocked me. It only took me an hour to reconstruct an entire day's worth of work in this spreadsheet. And I was very confident that when I was done, I didn't lose anything. I captured everything that was necessary, and then I just moved on. So in a sense, I lost an hour today, but oh my gosh, it was the best hour of my life, because it let me know and experience the changes that I have made within myself in such a beautiful way that I was like on a cloud. I'm like, first the weather, and then this, and I'm like, oh, what a fabulous way to start a day.
And I'll bet you took a backup too.
Well, I immediately took it off the server, and it's now on my hard drive.
Yeah, I figured.
It's been for 11 years, but now it will remain on my hard drive.
Quite understandable, yeah. So, it's like a protective service. Like, okay, we're going to store it on the server just in case we're going to take a backup.
Mm-hmm. So I felt like I lived, all of this happened like in the first 45 minutes or an hour and a half, who knows what, of my morning.
Right.
This was like I wake up and boom, I get hit with weather fear, and then I've lost all my data. And I feel like I literally just danced right through both of those experiences.
Which is fantastic.
And to me, it's like, this is the ultimate of living law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I believe law of attraction promises.
Yeah, sure.
That is possible to live in a life where there is ease and pleasantness. And, oh my gosh, I know you and I have talked about celebrating the wins.
Yeah.
This was so worthy of celebrating
and
taking the time to talk about it, because, wow.
Big win.
This is a big deal.
Yeah.
I didn't buy a house, I didn't have $100,000 drop in front of me. This is almost better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you turned it around so beautifully. That was great. That's a win-win all the way around. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that's the real battle right there. Battle is the wrong word. That's the real challenge. To when life throws you a curveball that's a really big curveball, bounces in the dirt and jumps up and hits you in the forehead, how are you going to react? Well, you chose to react differently from in the past, and wow, what a positive result you got out of it.
And, I'm even going to add a little piece. You just said I chose to act differently.
Mm-hmm.
I would say with the weather, there was a conscious choice.
Mm-hmm.
But with the losing my data, that rolled almost so seamlessly. I didn't feel like I was choosing whether to be upset or not. The autopilot response was to just go, And what meant to me was, well, I wonder where I go from here. I wonder what I do, But it wasn't, it's like there never was this, oh my gosh, I'm so angry. Oh no, I'm going to choose to be calm. That never even entered my experience this morning.
Which is great, because that shows just how far you've developed in terms of working on yourself. It was still a choice that you made, but it was such an easy choice that you didn't even have to think about it. It was just like, oh, okay, so what's next?
Exactly, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
And so, I was telling this to a friend this morning. I said, I'm so glad that my data got lost, because without this experience, I wouldn't have recognized how far I've come in my own personal development.
You sound like Joel talking about how he's so glad that he went through the experience of being thrown in jail and eating out of garbage cans and so forth, because it made him what he is today. But literally, it's the same message.
I guess so. Thank God I wasn't going through what he did. But, if I did, I would jump on. I would land on the other side. I know I would.
Sure. Yeah. So very cool.
So do we want to talk for a few minutes about the delegation idea that we left off on yesterday?
I am drawing a blank. What do you mean by the delegation
Okay.
idea?
So what you said at the top of this show was how you were so excited and you so happily worked on the software project because what made it so happy to you
Oh, I
is
see.
that you have developers and
Yeah.
programmers who are doing the work because you've delegated it.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
not having to do it yourself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's something that both Louise and I have made a conscious decision to do this year compared to last year. And the difference is like night and day. It's a huge difference. It's gigantic. I don't know if I can even quantify it other than to say that neither one of us is stressed out. And right about now, last year, Louise would have been tearing her hair out. That's how
Wow.
big of a difference it is. Yeah.
Well, when we were talking about this at the end of the show yesterday, I was talking about the power of leverage in delegating some of your work
Mm-hmm.
to the universe.
Right?
And Abraham has a lovely story of how Esther. I just love how Abraham is always telling stories on Esther, but it's fun. So Abraham was telling how Esther was feeling pretty stressed. And she just had so much on her plate. She had a limited amount of time to get it done. And she and Jerry had gone out for breakfast. And, she was just kind of complaining about, oh, my God, I have so much to do. I have this and this and this, and I don't know where the time is going to come from. And, I have to contact so-and-so and this one. Don't even know if I'll be able to connect with them because who knows where they are. And she had decided to tune into Abraham, and Jerry asked some questions. And she started kind of delivering the message, and it went something like this. They were at a restaurant where they had like those paper placemats,
Right.
before the food is brought.
Yeah.
And so Abraham said, Esther, turn the placemat over so that you're looking at like the big, huge blank white sheet, and then draw a line down the middle. And on the left side, write, Esther's to-do list. And on the
Okay.
right side, say the universe's to-do list.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
And then take all the things that she had like in her day planner and start plotting who's going to be responsible for taking care of those items. And so things like, call so-and-so, that went onto the universal manager's list because that was the one she didn't know how she was going to be able to like connect with these people.
Okay. That
And the
makes
things
sense.
that she felt were easy that she could like knock off really quickly, she put on her side of the list.
Sure.
And so before her breakfast was delivered, she had written every to-do item, every task was now written on this list. And honestly, I believe, if I remember the story correctly, the universe's side was way longer. She only decided to take on the one she wanted. And then, they had breakfast, and then the day began to play out. And I want to say they were in a city, and they had to get all this stuff done within 3 days. And what ended up happening was like she'd be in the middle of, writing an email, and all of a sudden she'd get this idea from her inner being, say, call Joe Smith. And so she stopped what she was doing. She'd pick up the phone. She'd call Joe Smith, someone who's never in, and boom, he answers the phone.
Hmm.
She was able to have the conversation with him in 5 minutes. She hung up the phone, and boom, that whole thing was done. Something she had put so much anxiety on. She had attached so much anxiety to, don't know when I'm going to find him. He's never around. And, what if he's out of town? And boom, her guidance, her inner being just told her exactly when to call him. And he was there. Their conversation was brief, but it got accomplished. And every single thing that was on the universal manager side of the placemat pretty much happened that same way.
This is pretty
there
much
was
like
even
this is like the weather report. I mean, you got your weather report by tuning into your inner being and saying anything to worry about. Your inner being said no, and you said okay, and you were done. This is very similar to that.
Exactly.
It's the inner being report.
And so there was another thing where she and Jerry they were taking their walk for the day on their property, and they walked to the end of the property where the street was, and they see this man who's a neighbor, and the neighbor comes up and starts conversing with them, and that conversation actually knocked off several other things on their list that they had no idea how they were going to get done.
That's funny.
I don't remember the specifics, but it was like, whoa. So, by the end of the 3 days, Esther even had time to spend with the grandchildren, which is what she really wanted to do, but didn't think she had the time to do it. But she ended up spending wonderful time with her grandkids. And those 3 days that could have been filled with so much stress ended up being fun-filled, productive, but they also got to witness how when they let go of having to control every single aspect of every single thing they felt they had to do and actually relinquish some of it to the universe, it all got done. And so I probably heard that story, I don't know, 5 years ago, I'm going to guess. And I remember thinking at the time, easier said than done, But I want to figure out how to do this.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to test how the law of attraction works, what do most people do? Most people do like parking places, right? That's where you start off because parking places seem easy.
I've done that.
Yeah, so you start with trying to attract those. But what a great way to test it. Why not try putting it out there? I have this to-do list. Half of it is from hell. Why not give the hell part to the universe and see if it can solve it?
Now, I will be honest. I don't have a placemat and I don't draw a line down the middle. I have one to-do list and I write all the things that need to be done. But then every day, sometimes several times a day, my eyes will go to my to-do list and I will just ask my inner being, this is my version of the placemat delegation. My version is to just look over each item and just ask my inner being, like, are there any things that I should be doing right now?
Good
and
test.
like, let's say one of them was write Walt an email about a show topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I might look at that and I'll get, no, not now. And I don't. And it will be interesting because all of a sudden the phone will ring and somebody I needed to talk to will call me. And I hadn't even put them on my list yet. But I was available because I wasn't, head down into my email. Because sometimes I don't answer the phone when I'm really busy doing something.
Understandable.
Or else an IM will come through on something that was really important, but it hadn't even hit my to-do list. Or it was on my to-do list, and instead of me reaching out to that person reached out to me. But I have to tell you, I've been doing this now for at least a year. I didn't do it like, I'm going to start this process. It just sort of started to happen little by little. And now I would say I'm fully invested in not tackling, and I use that word purposely, I don't tackle my to-do list anymore. All those items are there because they're things that need to get done. But I just look at it very gently and just kind of ask my inner being, like, where do I start today? What's a good thing for me to work on? And so that's what I do. So I love thinking in terms of I have a universal manager that does a lot of my work for me.
Mm.
And so that's me leveraging the power of the universe. And I delegate a lot of it is I'm delegating the timing. Because I used to put things in a certain order and I did them in a certain sequence. And I have finally learned to let go of the sequence that I thought it had to be done this way, because the universe usually knows things better. Like if I say I have to do this, in my old days, I used to, let's say I had 5 phone calls I had to make. Not one of those persons would have been even available. And yet I would have put so much emotional investment in, I want to knock those 5 things off quickly and then get on to the rest of the day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But now I'd feel really frustrated because I would have felt like I wasted my time trying to reach out to all these people. And then worse, because I couldn't get them by phone, then I would shoot them emails. And then after I'd send them an email, I got their out-of-office response that said they'll be on vacation for the next 2 weeks.
Of course.
And I'm like, oh, my gosh. But see, now I don't bother with any of that. I look, and it's amazing how, I think I'll call that person. And they're like, you caught me just before I walked out of the door. I was going to be out for the next month. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, great. Well, can you answer blah, blah, blah? They say yes, and we're done.
That's nice. Yeah. I can't
Yeah.
say I've been doing that, but I didn't even realize I was doing anything until you started talking about this. And now I realize I have been. I mean, in one sense, the way I looked at it was I was running away from stuff. And I was saying that because it used to be I was the person like you who would just, tackle it, right? Head on. I'm going to plow through the list and all that. And that's the way my day went every single day. And like you described, very often, I'd run into rough patches because I was doing that and so on and so forth. Well, I've gotten to the point in my life where I just can't do that anymore. My mind, my experience, my body, my life won't let me do it. I don't know exactly why it is, but for whatever reason, I just can't bring myself to do it. So what I've been doing instead is I look at the items on my list, and I have to say the list keeps getting shorter and shorter, which I like. But the items on the list I look at, and I say, well, I don't really feel like doing that one. I don't feel like doing that one. I feel like doing that one. I think I'll do that one. And in my old mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm just doing the stuff that's fun. I'm avoiding the hard work. I'm avoiding all that stuff. But in my new mind, I'm thinking, it's going to get done at some point. I don't know exactly when. It needs to get done, but it doesn't need to be get done right this moment, so it'll get done. And so I just kind of go through the day like, I feel like doing this, so I'm going to do this one. The interesting thing that has happened, and I was just noticing this as you were talking, is that sometimes the items on the list, I don't know how else to say this, they go away.
I get that.
I still don't quite follow how that happens. But for whatever reason, they just don't have any more importance, and so I just kind of remove them after a while. And I ask myself,
like they become obsolete.
Something like that, yeah. Like what?
Yeah.
What happened? This was really important, and now it's like not important. How did that happen? Yeah. It's bizarre.
But that does happen.
It does, and it's strange. I'm still getting used to it. I
used to follow some gurus. Which, by the way, is just my word for experts that I consider highly intelligent, and they have a measure of success that I hadn't gotten yet for myself. Mm-hmm. So I follow their wisdom. And but sometimes their wisdom doesn't work for me because it doesn't fit me, mm-hmm. but you don't know until you try.
Right,
so
sure.
For many years, I would follow these experts that would talk about the 80-20 rule. Mm-hmm. There's an 80-20 rule for everything.
Oh,
but
there
in
is.
This case, the 80-20 rule is, 20% of what really needs to get done that will move the needle will move 80% of the needle. Mm-hmm. So it's like there's only a small number of things that if you do those will actually have the greatest impact on your business or on your day or on whatever. And so they talked about do that 20% first. Do the stuff that is going to be high impact, for your business. Mm-hmm. And I'd look at it and go, yeah, that just doesn't excite me. That feels overwhelming. I'm not quite sure even how to do that. That's a really huge project. Ugh. And so it would just stay on my to-do list forever. But every time I looked at it, I felt a sense of guilt. I felt a sense of failure, like you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And if you don't, you're not going to be successful. Well, I started blowing that up. In other words, you know what? I'm just going to do what I want to do and see where that takes me. And so I would do little, what I would call piddly things that didn't move the needle at all, but like data entry. I don't know anybody who likes data entry except me. I think data entry is kind of fun.
You like it,
and
okay.
I like to see how fast I can do it and if I can find patterns of finding better efficiency. And so I would do little data entry projects. And then once I got that done, I'm like, they're all done. And I'd get all these little piddly things done. And then all that was left on my list were these projects that I didn't really know what to do with.
Right.
But I actually had momentum. Now, I didn't have these words then, but I understand it today.
Sure.
I had a sense of momentum in terms of accomplishment mm-hmm. and feeling like on an energetic roll. And it's like, okay, what else do I want to take on? Well, by the time I'd done all this little piddly stuff and all that was left was the big projects that really required some time and attention, I actually felt energized and ready to do them. It's like, okay, well, look at all these other things I accomplished today. So let's see what I can do with this project. And I'd get into it and I'd go, this isn't nearly as hard as I thought. And the efficiencies that I had been playing with on my little piddly, data entry projects now had gained so much momentum, I was finding ways to be efficient with the big project that had the giant unknown attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And now the unknown was becoming not so scary, and I was figuring out some really inventive, creative ways to move through it and to make a difference in my business. And so after doing things that way for a while, I went, this seems to be working for me. This is counterintuitive based on how these gurus were teaching me to do it. But, their wisdom worked for them, but this is working for me. Well, then as I started learning law of attraction, I started to recognize why it was working for me. And for those other guys, why their way was working for them. Because whatever meaning we had given to the thing that we chose to do was the thing that gave us a sense of delight and excitement.
Mm.
And once we were doing stuff with the feeling of this is fun and this is juicy and I love doing this, now momentum started to take on a life of its own. And so my personal process now is do the stuff that seems easy and fun. And once I keep doing it, I'll get to the parts of the day of stuff I didn't really want to do before, but now it doesn't seem like it's a big deal because I have momentum working for me, which is another form of leveraging the universe.
And by the way, what we're talking about here, it applies whenever we have a certain degree of latitude about what we're going to do on our to-do lists. I mean, if you're working a job and your boss says, do item 3, do that first, do that before anything else. We're not recommending you blow off item 3 because you don't feel like doing it. That's not what we're talking about here. If the boss tells you to do item 3, you do item 3 because that's what you're being paid to do. But if you're in a situation...
Well, that's when you go and you take a bathroom break and you do some segment intending.
Yes.
And you start putting out your feelers for, okay, I want item 3 to be something that comes to me naturally and easily, and my inner being will start to direct me to show me how to do this in a way that'll be fun.
Exactly. So the point here is to empower you to do the job within the parameters of what your job is. We're not saying use this as a way to rewrite your job description. That doesn't work very well. Like Louise and I would not be terribly happy if our gardeners, who do a wonderful job, by the way, they are immaculate in the work that they do in the gardens. We get people commenting on it constantly, like they couldn't believe how good of a job they did and so forth. Well, if one of our gardeners decided to say, today I just don't feel like caring that much, so I'm going to leave some weeds there, and I won't keep my tools neat, and I won't get the debris out of the way in a timely manner, and if they start doing that, guess what? They're not going to keep the job real long because that doesn't work. It has to be within the context of your job. As long as your job has certain areas that you have some flexibility on, then that's what we're talking about. And if you're working on something where there is no flexibility, you literally have to do it, step A, step B, step C, step D every single time. Then, like you say, you get yourself into a segment intending role and find a way to make it enjoyable.
Well, and there are even times that, obviously because I work from home, there's nobody physically watching me, but it is amazing how almost because no one's watching me, I feel more obligated to make sure that I'm working when I'm sitting behind my computer and I'm not just, on the phone chit-chatting away with girlfriends or my mom or something like that.
Right.
But, everybody has those times that no matter what kind of job you have a personal something that needs to be done, whether it's an errand or whether you have to make a phone call to, some agency or whatever. We all have those moments.
That's right.
Now, in some jobs, you use your lunch break for that, or you take an hour at the end of the day and you get off early and you go take care of those things. Well, I kind of don't have that luxury, and at the same time, I have more luxury because I do work from home and nobody's watching me. But like I said, I have this obligation thing that I shouldn't take my work time to do personal things. So regardless if you think that's crazy or not, that's okay, but that's just how my brain works. But sometimes I'll have a stack of things on my desk that are personal that I need to get done. I really need to call this one and I really need to do this. And these are things that can only be done during the 8 to 5 business day. And so when I see that stack is just getting taller and taller and nothing's happening, sometimes the pain or the contrast or the resistance of the pile getting so big, and I'll feel a little overwhelmed. I'll say, manager, universal manager, would you please organize this stuff for me and make this happen in a way that's easy, where I don't violate my own values of working during the 8 to 5 day. And it will be amazing to me. All of a sudden, I'll get this nudge again from my inner guidance, my inner being, and it'll be kind of like pick through the pile and go to such and such one. And let's say it's one I have to call my electric company. And I'll call, and the customer service person that I speak to totally knows what I need, and they're able to manage fixing the problem within 3 minutes. And so the fact that I had a 3-minute phone call in the middle of my business day doesn't make me feel like I've stolen time from my job, because I'm allowed to take breaks, you know?
Right.
So that was my break. But when I looked at the stack, it felt like, I don't know when I'm going to have the time to call these people, or when is my mind going to be free from my job or whatever. But I just find that before I know it, my personal stack is done. And it might take a couple, 3 days, and something might sit there for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't worry about the timing unless there really is a time issue on it.
Right.
But it's like I let my inner being guide me as to when to make that phone call, because I'll be connected with just the perfect person that can handle things not only efficiently, but in a way that makes me feel good. Like I'm not having to force them to do their job, but they know exactly what I need and how to do it.
Mm-hmm,
and it's so fun to go. And while they're like, can I put you on hold, Miss Dillard? I'm like, sure. I'm at my job and I'm doing my work because I'm still at my computer doing what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, that 3 minutes wasn't even a full 3 minutes away from my job, because I was still double dipping, into my job. And so I love the leverage that the universe provides to me. And I will tell you what it took for me to allow that. And yes, I had to allow it. I had to allow myself the opportunity to not be in control of everything. Because yes, I thought only I could do things the way I want them done. I didn't even think the universe could get it done the way I needed it to be done, which was really kind of arrogant and stupid.
Well, it's understandable though.
But little by little, I started letting go of certain things. And oh my goodness, I've let go of so much now. And now I feel like I'm doing my full-time job while the universe is kind of doing the full-time job when I'm not doing my full-time job. Or wow.
That's very cool.
So anyway, that's my big shout out for, we don't really have to be overwhelmed.
No.
And if we are, it's just because we're taking on too much for ourselves and we're not utilizing the powers of the universe that are there for us to utilize.
It's very, very true. Now, we are actually supposed to be looking at the book today, so I mean, maybe we take the last quarter of the show to do that. Yeah. Because it's an important topic. It isn't directly tied in. Usually they're always tied in, right? But this time it's not tied into what we're talking about. But that's okay, because it's something that I think most people have experienced a desire to do once they've learned how the law of attraction works. They want to share it, right? In fact, we want people to share it too. Actually, I should take a moment and say, if you're a subscriber, thank you for being a subscriber to the podcast. And we know lots of you are because we see it in the numbers. If you're not a subscriber, take a moment here to subscribe and then share. And all the instructions are right on the homepage at loatoday.net. You can also listen to the live broadcast there. If you're so inclined to do that, we actually do get people listening to the live broadcast as well as the recorded version. But do subscribe and share, because that makes it easier for us to deliver the show to you, first of all. And second of all, the sharing part is how other people find out about it. So that's where the sharing part comes in. But like I was saying, people want to share what they've learned. And so the question comes up, well, shouldn't I be trying to prove this to other people? This whole thing about how the law of attraction works and how to be a deliberate creator and how to, make the changes in your life to make your life better and so forth. Shouldn't I be proving it to others so that other people will take it on? So that's the topic today. And it's a really short topic, but Jerry starts it off by saying, when a person wants to test these laws or principles in order to try to prove their validity to someone else, and they're saying, let me show you what I can do with this, Does that have any bearing on the effectiveness of the law of attraction?
And Abraham says, the problem with trying to prove something is that it often causes you to push against something that you do not want. And as you do that, you activate that thing in your vibration, which makes it more difficult to accomplish what you do want. It also can be discouraging, for if they have strong doubt, they may influence you to also have some doubt. There is not a need to prove anything to anyone with your words. Let that which you are and that which you are living be your clear example to uplift others.
And that's it right there. That's the,
oh my gosh,
that's the reminder.
Yeah, and I totally second Abraham's words. I have spent years trying to tell people things and trying to prove things. And, one of their other phrases that I totally understand, words don't teach.
No.
They don't. Only life experience teaches. And as silly as, I was, but I didn't know I was silly at the time, years later, I've had a couple people come to me and go, hey, Wendy, that thing that you talk about all the time, I think I could use your help now. And what really they're saying after we get into conversation is they're finally ready to have this conversation. And maybe I'm saying to them now the same thing that I've said to them 700 times before, but their ears were closed those first 700 times.
Yeah.
And so when they come and they ask, that's when they're ready to listen. And so I just, I don't try to tell anybody anything much anymore. I don't try to prove anything. I'm like, if my life is not the proof that you're looking for, then go look for happiness elsewhere. Because it's happiness is available to all of us. And based on our personalities, there is something for every one of us to find joy. There's something for every one of us to find the teaching, if that's what we're looking for. And you know what? I'm not going to be everybody's teacher. And, Tony Robbins is not going to be everybody's teacher. And there's so many teachers out there. There's so many people who have so much wisdom in the area of personal development. But you know what? I love the fact that there's so much variety, because we are all variety.
We are.
And I talked to somebody yesterday who had called me about doing coaching work with me. And she said, I've been listening a lot to Abraham, but she said, I started to feel like I really wanted to get another perspective. So I've been listening to Neville Goddard.
Mm-hmm. No, Neville, yeah. Neville Goddard.
Okay.
Neville Goddard, boy.
It's not a person that I have followed, so I apologize that I may not have his name, pronounced exactly correctly. But as I was talking to this gal, I thought, what great wisdom in saying, you know what, I don't want to be imbalanced and only take one person's word for something. I want to get insight from other people. And I think that's really cool.
It is, yeah.
And so, yeah. And so anyway, I don't think you can tell anybody anything if they're not asking the question.
I like what you said, too.
Jerry to say, can you prove it to others? But the answer's, no, not really.
I like what you said, too, about how most often people need to learn through their own experience, their life experience. And as you were telling that part, it brought to mind one of our gardeners, who is also an occasional listener. Sometimes he listens to a lot of podcasts. Sometimes he takes breaks. But he started listening last summer. And he has been going through a whole bunch of difficult times. I won't repeat what all those things are that he's gone through, but just take my word for it. It's been really, really, really rough for him and his mother. But he was listening to the podcast. He was interested, and every once in a while I'd be giving him a ride somewhere. And so, during the ride we'd be talking about stuff, and he would ask questions, and I'd tell him what I'd learned and so forth. And he was doubtful about it, but he was interested. And he kept listening to podcasts and kept dealing with his stuff. Well, this past winter was, as bad as things had been for him, this winter was really bad. It was really rough. I mean, there were a couple of times Louise and I had to kind of help him out a bit. And we helped him get through the winter. And then I don't know exactly when it happened. He has been trying to reach out for help in a lot of different ways. And a number of them were ways that were, he was spinning his wheels. He wasn't following inner guidance like we were talking about today. He had a to-do list, and he would try to do it whatever way he could within very limited means that he had available to him. And he was getting punched in the face very often the way he was doing it. Well, I don't remember exactly where it was, but at some point he had to go to a government office to deal with something. And for whatever reason, he decided that day he was going to adopt a positive mindset about it. He walks in, he sees this long line of people, and he says, well, I guess I'm going to be here for a while. Not going to worry about it. And he sat down. I guess he had paperwork to fill out or something like that. Got halfway through filling out the paperwork, and all of a sudden he got expedited in ahead of the rest of the line to be processed. And he said, wow, this stuff really works. And he went through a couple more incidents like that. The next time he saw Donna, who's our GM, he says, wow, what Louise and Walt have been telling me is right. This stuff really works. He's gotten to the point now. He is so excited. Stuff's starting to open up for him. His major life situation right now is due to change within about a 2-month period, according to what he knows right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if it accelerates. It's been an entire turnaround for him just because he decided that he wanted to find out for himself whether it was true. To find out for himself whether this stuff really works. And his answer is emphatically, yes, it works.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. We got about 9 minutes left. Do we have enough time to do a section? These are pretty short sections.
I think we do.
All right.
I think we do.
Well, the next one is entitled, Why is there a need to justify one's worthiness? Interesting question. Jerry asks, Abraham, why do you feel that so many of us in physical form seem to have a need to justify the good that comes to us?
And Abraham says, part of the reason is that humans incorrectly believe in the limitation of resources. So they feel they must explain to others why they should receive it instead of them. Belief in unworthiness is another factor. There is a very powerful thought here in your physical dimension that says, you are not worthy, so you are here to prove yourself as worthy. You are not here to prove yourself worthiness. You are not here to prove your worthiness. There you are. You are worthy. You are here. This is interesting that we're reading this today because I was literally thinking about the topic of worthiness yesterday.
Oh, really?
And how I know I spent probably the first 4 decades of my life feeling I had to prove my worthiness.
Oh, okay.
So it says, you are not here to prove your worthiness. You are worthy. You are here for the experience of joyful expansion. It was by the power of your desire and by the power of your allowing, indeed, by your application of the very laws that we are discussing here, that you have emerged into this time-space reality. And so your physical existence here is proof of your worthiness or deservedness to be or do or have whatever it is you desire, you see. If you can realize that the reason your thoughts about your unworthiness feel so bad is because that thought is in utter disagreement with the way your inner being feels, you might then seek to improve the direction of your thought. But if you do not understand that, then often you flounder around trying to please others. But because there is no consistency in what they ask of you, eventually you lose your way. When you are in the mode of justifying, you are in a negative mode, for you are not focused upon what you want. Instead, you are trying to convince others that it is all right for you to desire, and you need not do this. It is all right.
Yeah, very nice.
I totally get that. And, I really do agree. I think the majority of humanity is trying to prove their worthiness. And I believe they're trying to prove it to themselves. But the way most people go about, and I'm speaking really mostly for how I know I've done it, the way I went about trying to feel worthy was by getting people outside of myself to validate my worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
If my boss felt like I was a good employee, that gave me, like one check mark of worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
If my parents said kind things to me or praised me or said they were proud of me, okay, there's another check of, okay, there's a little worthiness going on here. And friends and family and, but here's where this got me into trouble. I spent so much time spinning my wheels trying to get other people to approve of me.
Mm-hmm.
I found it's really nearly impossible.
Yes, isn't that
because
true?
I kind of wanted everybody to approve of me.
Right.
And
yeah.
if there was one person who didn't, that's what I focused on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it would make me feel bad about me. And I kept having, like, my inner being, the universe, led me through so many life experiences, and they all kept pointing me to the same message that I would grab hold of for half a second and then let go of it. And the thing I was being guided to is, it's not necessary to get anybody's validation of your worthiness. Just like Abraham says here, you are worthy.
You are worthy.
The sheer fact that you exist on planet Earth means you're worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And I'd get that every now and then, and I'd have this moment of, ooh, I am worthy. And then, sure enough, the next thing would come, and somebody would criticize me. My dad would criticize me, and I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with me again? And I'd just loop that circle so many times until, you know, I started learning by the law of 2x4.
Yeah, right.
Maybe you've heard of it.
I have heard of that one.
Something comes to you in a really extreme way. You get hit over the head with a 2x4.
I usually try to avoid the 2x4s that have the spikes in them. Those really hurt.
Ouchie, ouchie. You know, eventually, and I honestly will tell you, maybe in the last couple of years is when I finally recognized there's nobody that can declare my worthiness that will ever be sufficient for me.
Yeah.
Because nobody was ever intended to declare my worthiness. That was always an inside job. And it was never even a job to be on the to-do list.
And I have to say, for myself, I never really had the desire to get that worthiness vote from other people. Well, not never. There were times that I have. Although my way of going about it was a little bit different. It was more like, well, I got validation from person A, person B, and person C. What's wrong with you? But more importantly, what I would tend to do is actually the hardest person to get validation from was me. I was the one who was withholding it most often. And it wasn't so much that I needed the validation. It's just I needed to give myself a break. I needed to cut myself some slack. And once I started doing that, that's when things really improved for me. But it can manifest a lot of different ways. It can be a need for worthiness. It can be a need for, you know, giving yourself a break. It can be a lot of different things. The point, though, I think, is you have to identify what's going on with yourself. And that can take some time. That can take a little effort to kind of figure that out. You know, take a little, you know, insightfulness, maybe talking to somebody close to you and so forth. Figure out what's going on in your case. But once you've got it, once you know, then it is really nice to know you're already worthy. It's nice to know you already deserve this. It's like you're deserving already. I am deserving already. We're all deserving.
Mm-hmm. Well, and every now and then, if that worthiness issue or deservedness issue pops up for me, one of the things that easily causes me to shift out of that is, okay, Wendy, you're not feeling very good about yourself. What does that say? Well, if I'm not feeling good, it means I'm not in sync with how my inner being thinks about me. And so then I think to myself, well, how does my inner being think? Well, my inner being only knows how to think in terms of positive. So my inner being must think I'm like fabulous and wonderful and magnificent. And then that's where I go, so what's wrong with you, Wendy, that you're not on the same page as your inner being?
Yes.
Jump on that bandwagon, and it sure feels better.
It sure does. No doubt about
and
that.
In a way, that is my proof that I'm magnificent.
Oh.
Because whenever I stop thinking how fabulous I am, it feels bad. If I feel unworthy, it feels bad.
Good point.
Because my inner being, who is me, it's the broader part of me, the non-physical part of me, always thinks I'm worthy. Actually, the way I look at it, I don't even think my inner being is thinking in terms of worthiness. My inner being just goes, oh my gosh, Wendy, you are magnificent. You're brilliant. You're fabulous. You know, and who am I to disagree?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that all of our listeners are fabulous too. That's why we want to invite them back next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye now.